Now, if you're running a nice accounting fraud like this, you could pay yourself a lot of money, too. Now, back to these repos. It's something, as I said, that's actually often done within the banking industry because they'll need short-term cash and they've got things that they can't liquidate immediately. But there was one key difference with the way Lehman did it. Instead of categorizing these transactions as a loan, as I just described with the governor, they described them publicly as a sale, never disclosing that they would ever have to pay back the $50 billion that they borrowed for those assets. That is not legal. And don't just take my word for it. The report, again, out of the 2,200 pages, this is a quote, Lehman's failure to disclose the use of an accounting device, this repo transaction, to significantly and temporarily lower leverage, that's their risk, at the same time that it affirmatively represented those low leverage numbers to investors as positive news, created a misleading portrayal of Lehman's true financial health. Are you ready? Emails show that Lehman CEO Richard Fuld and the company's 3 different CFOs, for some reason they seem to go through a few of them, were made aware that this fraud was happening and did nothing to stop it. And I'll quote, in May of 2008, a Lehman senior vice president by the name of Matt Lee wrote a letter to management alleging accounting improprieties, referencing these repo transactions, that Lehman used $50 billion of Repo 105 transactions to temporarily move assets off the balance sheet at quarter end, hiding the debt. In fact, each of the individuals we mentioned, the CFOs and Dick Fuld, are required by law to sign off on each of their quarterly reports. Not to mention, they're forced to sign off on each of their annual reports. Those reports classified these transactions not as loans, but as sales. That is fraud. Fuld, when interviewed for the report, denies it. The emails also show even Lehman's auditor, Ernst & Young, knew this was going on and did nothing about it. Quoting from the report, Ernst & Young took no steps to question or challenge the non-disclosure by Lehman of its use of $50 billion of temporary off-balance sheet transactions. Think Arthur Andersen and Enron. Somebody on the outside has to validate the fraud on the inside. The bottom line, while many Americans and many in our government would love for you to believe that the financial crisis and the transfer of wealth in this country was an accident, this report comes just short of suggesting this is by no means an accident, but instead one of the greatest crimes ever perpetrated against a group of people. This crime, an accounting fraud perpetrated by bank CEOs against the American taxpayer and enabled by the U.S. government.
That should really generate soul searching. Who was running the New York Fed that had people inside this bank? Tim Geithner. Who was running the Fed? Ben Bernanke, when all this was going on. They should have known if they didn't.
So there you can see the criminality of Geithner and the rest of these guys. You know, all these people putting out money to try and facilitate like their companies actually doing legitimate, taking in, you know, $50 billion from some other corrupt company and putting it in their books and then not even classifying it as a loan, classifying it as a sale.
Yeah.
Total criminality, total fraud on its face.
Yeah. But I mean, that's generally what's happening. And I mean, that's how we got these whole like mortgage-backed securities and all these other things, is it was debt that was considered an asset. So, I mean, we're seeing this happen like all around, which is, you know, they'll take a liability and they'll make it something of value, like depleted uranium. They'll, you know, put in shells and vaporize and poison people for, you know, decades and centuries, basically. And then the same thing with fluoride. They'll poison your water with it when it shouldn't even have any business there. So, I mean, this is going to be the kind of behavior we're going to see. This is a massive financial crime, and it just shows that the bottom line is really what matters. And it doesn't matter. They'll go by whatever means to manipulate it and make it say whatever, because it's just a joke, and these people know it, that the money's not even real. It's just a whole big show, and they're like some of the, you know, head producers.
And as we've seen, they'll blow out the whole economy, and they don't even care about it. And they pick up the scraps at the end and somehow gain more control over us. So
Yep, and that leads us into our Reuters story about could Lehman be Ernst & Young's Enron following the Radigan rant there. The Big Four, which is these four accounting firms that pretty much are responsible for auditing these massive corporations. There used to be a lot more of them, so like look up the Big Four on Wikipedia and learn yourself. But now there's only a handful of these because they get caught up in things like Enron, and then they go out of business, and then they get absorbed by the other firms. So now we have four of them. But it says that the Big Four accounting firms face potential litigation from undetected frauds at large public companies that could easily destroy them. And in this sense, the auditors are supposed to look at the substance of the transactions in addition to seeing whether they actually complied with U.S. accounting rules. And in this case, they had not seen anything that would prove to them that Repo 105 transactions complied with the U.S.'s generally accepted accounting principles. So, I mean, this is pretty much accounting censorship, where they censor the books, and the obvious outcome is that the monetary policies, like I've said, that aren't even real. So I hope that you all really realize that this is just a big joke. It's a big game to them, and we gotta stop playing because it's just utterly absurd.
Yeah, another issue involving some corruption, although not on the economic front. This coming from the IDG news service. Former TSA analyst charged with computer tampering, Douglas James Duchuk, 46, tried to compromise computers at the TSA's Colorado Springs Operations Center 7 days after he'd been given a 2-week notice that he'd be dismissed. And of course this has brought up a large claim by people that, well, why did he still have security clearance if he had already been told he was being dismissed? That's an obvious thing that shouldn't have been allowed to have happened, and they said that they're going to change that now. And you know, it shows, of course, the criminality of these TSA guys who basically just need a high school diploma and be able to be okay to shill for a police state.
No, you can be an airport tyrant.
Yeah, you can go be your own little airport tyrant and go join the TSA.
Yeah. Our next story is also security-related news. This is from Yahoo News, from the AP, Associated Press. It says AP exclusive Pentagon gun is from Tennessee police. This is about 2 guns used in high-profile shootings, one in Vegas courthouse and then another one at the Pentagon. Both came from the police and court system of Memphis, Tennessee. And these are guns that were once in police custody that eventually get sold on the open market to provide for resources and whatnot for those police stations. So, I mean, they seize assets, they trade them out for things that they want. But others, so they trade or sell them for these equipment such as bulletproof vests and whatnot. There's a guy in the story towards the end, of course. I always put the good stuff at the end of the stories. Rich Wyatt, a former police chief of Alma, Colorado, now operates a gun store. And he said, to say we need to chase guns is not the issue. We need to chase people. So we need to not get rid of our rights. We need to understand there are certain people that will abuse the privilege of carrying a weapon and whatnot, but we don't need to like take away the ability for everybody else to own a gun.
And this, of course, brings into the whole issue that we talk about a lot of false flag terrorism and illegitimate operations, because it should be a clear flag to anyone researching intelligence operations or black ops. If you see weapons or material being used that was formerly at some other, group's thing
there's
that's
a connection
with the federal government, like the Tennessee Police Department there.
Yeah.
There's obviously something going on because it's not that big of a coincidence.
If you're doing an investigation, I mean, that's a massive red flag.
Some more really disturbing corruption here. This article is actually coming from the Daily Mail. A U.S. pediatrician faces 471 sex charges against 103 child patients after police discover 13 hours of video at his surgery. This U.S. pediatrician is going to stand trial, one of the worst child sex abuse cases in America's history. Dr. Earl Bradley has been charged with 471 counts against 102 girls and 1 boy. And, this is really just a sick, disgusting story. You can go read it if you want. Basically, this guy was involved in doing inappropriate activity with these children. He'd bring them down in his little basement area. Sick thing, and it just shows what, these type of people are into. And this type of stuff needs to be exposed. That's why we're highlighting it on our show, because this type of criminal filth needs to be shown to everyone.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really quite frightening, because, I mean, this is just tip of the iceberg. There are massive rings of demented, sick, twisted people that have like a tenuous network of people in like all levels of government. I mean, it's just really frightening when you have hundreds of thousands of people disappearing every year, and you know that a significant fraction of them are probably going to some very, very demented, dark purposes and that kind of thing.